Florida Gator fans are getting antsy waiting for recruits to pop. So we're bringing in On3's Keith Niebuhr to discuss. All right, Keith, big recruiting weekend this weekend after a big one last weekend. What's the overall mood in Gainesville right now based on the folks that you chat with?
Well, I think there's some optimism. Again, we talked about this earlier that, I think they're just encouraging people to be patient, that they're laying the groundwork for commitments down the road. And I covered Auburn for many years, 10 years, and they had a lot of peaks and valleys. And when they weren't winning at the level that the fans wanted them to win, recruiting became a little bit of a challenge, obviously. And so it's a challenge for Florida right now, right? This isn't 11-1 Florida. The logo isn't like this big. It's this big right now. That's just the reality of the situation. And so Auburn would have this big event called Big Cat Weekend, and every year it was huge. It was the big recruiting event. You could argue that it was up there with Friday Night Lights, and in many years, quite frankly, much better than Friday Night Lights. And so fans would have this expectation that commits would come, but some years there'd be none. But then you'd look back 30, 60, 90 days later, and by the end of the cycle, there'd be 10 guys that were there that day that ended up in the class. So again, what you're really trying to do with these official visit weekends. Look, again, you want guys to commit, no doubt. They're committing to other schools, and fans are saying, well, why aren't they committing to my school? So I understand the frustration, no doubt. But if you can't get them to commit on the spot, and quite frankly, when you start recruiting these high-level guys, they're going to want to take visits, and the competition is going to be much more stiff, right? So one of the guys that visited this weekend, Michael, you and I, an offensive tackle from Texas, he's officially visiting Clemson, Alabama, and a few other big ones. Well, that guy ain't going to commit on the spot, okay? He's going to go to these other schools. So how does Clemson do it? How do they get all these kids to commit? Well, they've won 2 national titles in the last decade. That's how. Okay. If you're a Florida fan, you have to be patient. That's just the way it is. The alternative of that is, hey, my program's getting a lot of commitments, but they're guys that we're not really beating people out for.
Right.
So what's the progression? How do you know if your program's on an upward path? Well, when Florida was at its peak, they were out recruiting Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame for guys, right? And then all of a sudden you're beating out, I don't want to knock programs, but you're beating out, whatever, NC State, let's say. Well, it's not a bad program, but it's not Alabama, right? And then all of a sudden you're not winning as much. So now what you're seeing is Florida is back in the ring, right? They're back in these fights now with some bigger name guys. And that's encouraging. I think that's real encouraging because that's sort of what's been missing. This is my first year back covering Florida, but I always followed them from afar. And when recruiting wasn't going well, you'd see guys getting taken really early in the cycle. Well, mid 3-star, unless you have him really high on your board and everybody else is wrong, you can generally circle back. Usually an elite program starts at the top, right, guys? It starts at the top and works its way down. And so that's what we're seeing Florida do, okay? Now, again, when are you going to see some results? That's the question. But I think that the mood is very optimistic. And quite frankly, last week's was a bigger group of kids. Probably a more talented group of kids than this weekend. Next weekend is really good, okay? Really good again. So after that, kids will start taking maybe 1 or 2 more visits. We're going to start seeing a lot of decisions being made late June, early August. I want to say one of Florida's big targets, receiver Jeray Hawkins out of IMG Academy. I think he announces June 26th, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's a Florida, should have mentioned her earlier, that's a Florida-Penn State battle. And, we think Florida probably has more room right now than Penn State. Well, a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to take Penn State's leftovers. You can't look at it that way. They liked them. It's just sometimes it's a first-in-the-boat situation, right? Sure. And so that may be a guy that Florida can land, a really fast guy, smaller guy. Some of the big-name guys, they're going to have to recruit to the very end. Jeremiah Smith, the Ohio State commit, that's going to go all the way to the end. But to answer your question in a roundabout way, the mood is there's some positivity. They're excited. Look, Chauncey Bowens, the running back commit, flipped to Georgia over the weekend. That's not good news. That's not what you want. That means they've got to now kind of get back to work at the running back position. I don't know in which direction they're going to turn. I think Florida sort of saw the writing on the wall the last few days on that one, so they weren't caught completely off guard. But overall, they feel like they've laid the groundwork to be in position to land a number of these guys that have visited the last 2 weeks. But again, Jordan Ross visited last week. Top 50 recruit, 4-star edge from Alabama. You ain't just going to get that guy to visit once and that's it.
Right.
He's going to Georgia. He's going to Tennessee. He's going to take a visit to Texas. He's going to take a visit to Oregon. Some of these guys are just in no hurry to make a decision right now. That's just the way it is, and even more so maybe in this NIL era. But if you continue to recruit all the way to the end, you hope for the best.
You already mentioned this, fans get a little antsy, but especially when these big weekends happen and back to back, and then you don't pick up several commitments. But do you think that the staff feels the same type of pressure?
Oh yeah, I think that yeah, absolutely. I mean yeah, because they know how the fans react. I mean, look, I'm with the fans. I mean, I get antsy too. I know you all probably do too. You want there to be movement, man. I mean, you know what I mean? Especially when teams you're competing against are picking up commitments. Like, well, wait a second. You guys say that it's not a big deal if they didn't get any commitments this weekend, but Clemson just picked up a half dozen guys. So that kind of grates on Florida fans. And I totally get it, believe me. I mean, I totally understand. But again, they are not Clemson right now. And sometimes you got to get through that through your skull. And okay, it's still Florida. It's still a big name program, but it's a little bit harder to win those big battles as you're trying to make the climb up, as opposed to already being toward the top. You know what I mean? So, but again, I think the mood is very positive, very optimistic coming out of not only this weekend but the previous weekend too. They feel like they're inching towards some really good news, and we'll see.
So you mentioned that there's another big recruiting weekend coming up next weekend. What do you anticipate for the rest of June when it comes to these big visits, on campus? Can Florida really continue to get elite campus to or elite talent to come on campus?
Yeah, now they're going to have, I think, looks like we got about 15 guys. I mean, it'll change coming in next weekend. So between the first 3 weekends, there's going to be roughly 45 guys. Now, in the old days, well, actually, technically, right now, you can only bring in 56 official visitors a year.
Sure.
Plus, you can count back a few. I don't know what Florida's count back number is, but the word is the NCAA is going to raise that number. I think Florida strategically, I don't think they'd be bringing in 45 guys in June on unofficial visit if they only had like 12 spots left. You know what I mean? Because you need some for the fall. You're going to need some for transfer. You're going to need some down the road. But this will be the last big visit weekend for Florida in June, because then the following weekend will be Friday Night Lights. And then they're going to bring back a lot of these kids. The last week of July, they're going to have something called the Grill in the Ville, just a cookout.
I think our
And
friend Shannon might be having a role in that.
this weekend's going to be significant. You've got four-star cornerback Wardell Mack of Louisiana coming, and I think people have assumed for a long time he was probably LSU bound, but LSU's already got a couple corners committed, and he's just one of several that's on their board. Liam Andrews is an interior offensive lineman coming down from Massachusetts. I think Florida's very much in the hunt with that. Penn State's another team to watch. Phil Troutwine, former Gator, is the offensive line coach up there. Here's a big one. Jamonte Waller is an edge/outside backer coming in from Picayune Memorial in Mississippi. Was just at Penn State this weekend. Had a lot of fun there. That was a great visit. But Florida very much in this, and he's linked up with some people that are also involved with Florida's running back commitment, Kanan Daniels, who's also from Mississippi. So another big one. Fletcher Westfall, 6'7", 300-pound offensive tackle from Virginia, is coming down. Aaron Childs, the four-star linebacker from the Baltimore area, he's coming down. Tight end Amir Jackson, who Florida may very well be the favorite right now. He's also visiting Auburn and was at Georgia, I want to say, this weekend, but Florida emerging as one of the favorites for him. A big one, four-star defensive lineman Nasir Johnson out of Dublin, Georgia. I believe his defensive line coach is Scott Pagano, the former Clemson player. We've heard that Florida is very much in the running with him. You've got Josiah Davis, a commitment. Kanan Daniels, a running back commitment for Florida that are coming in. Tawaski Abrams, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, the Florida State receiver commit from Fort Myers, Dunbar. Now, he had said he was going to visit Florida about a month ago, and then he tweeted out some things saying he was rock solid to FSU. So we'll see if he... Yeah, I mean, I think Florida's positioning itself to get some commitments in the near future. Will it be the big name guys people are waiting for? That I don't know. A lot of those guys, Jordan Ross, Jeremiah Smith, they're going to probably ride it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I do believe that Florida will have more commitments when the month ends than the 7 it has now. Number 5 ranking also.
All right. So let's let everybody know who is listening at home, where they can follow you, where they can read your work, and keep up with all the things that you are sharing with Gator fans these days.
Yeah, I would just say go to gatorsonline.com. Twitter is just me just putting links to the site up anyway. So I'm not chasing followers, but we are chasing subscribers. So gatorsonline.com. And we write about 200 recruiting stories a month. So if that's your bag, you'll probably like the site. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, Keith, we appreciate it so much. You have a good night.
You too. Take care.
If you missed our chat with Keith recapping last weekend's big recruiting visit weekend, click here to get caught up.